Hi, so today I wanted to talk about sight reading, how to become a good sight reader, and things that you should know or work on knowing so that you can sight read successfully. Obviously, the first thing you have to know are your notes. Be comfortable with where your notes are at on the keyboard and how to read actual notes. Not just reading individual notes, but looking for patterns, reading by direction, and with direction that would include intervallic reading. So being able to recognize very quickly your intervals of fourths or sevenths, fifths, all of those. You want to be able to read those very quickly and easily. And I can link with this video another video where I talk about apps that you can use to work on those things and better those skills. There are apps to work on that and make you better at recognizing those things. So you want to know the basics of just note reading, understand that. The second thing you want to do is know keyboard topography. So you can look at the piano and see where things are at, where the keys are, but you want to know it well enough with your hands so that you don't have to look at the keyboard. Part of being a good sight reader is being able to watch your score and not take your eyes off the score and let your hands find where these things are on the piano. You can use peripheral vision as well, where you can just kind of use the underlying part of your vision to kind of see the general area if your hands are under you or moving outside. There are times when you're sight reading you will have to look at the keyboard, but make it quick. And also know what's coming ahead before you look so that you kind of know where you're at and what's coming next. That way you can have time to get back to actually looking at your music as you continue to read. So keyboard topography is a big one. If you struggle with keyboard topography, you can practice by closing your eyes or practice making yourself look at your music and make your hands find where they're going. The best way to understand keyboard topography with the hands is utilize your 2 and 3 black keys. Be able to feel around and know where those are at. Also, the longer that you play piano, you're going to kind of learn your distance. Like, what's the distance of an octave? You'll memorize that in your hand, and also leaping back and forth. You'll kind of remember muscle memory as far as how far that is. So practice keyboard topography and being able to play without looking. A third thing you want to be able to do that really helps sight reading quite a bit, understand chords. Be able to read by chords. Know all of your chords, major, minor, augmented, diminished, your different types of seventh chords. The more you understand your chords and the more comfortable you are playing them, use exercises to practice playing chord inversions or arpeggiated chord inversions and passages. The better that you know that, then the easier it is going to be for you to sight read. And with that, you want to know your keys. Know your key signature. Be comfortable playing in those keys. And know what your secondary triads are. Know what your primary triads are. Be comfortable with the scale in that key. And be comfortable just playing in that particular key. If you are comfortable reading in that key, and also your hands are comfortable playing in that key, then you'll have an easier time sight reading pieces. Another thing with that too is understand musical style. If you're playing a jazz piece, you want to understand how jazz functions and how it's written. If you're playing a classical piece, you want to know what time period is, even the composer, how that composer works, what their typical chord progressions are, what the style of music is during that time. For example, if you're playing Mozart and it's a classical piece, you're probably going to have Alberti bass. Be comfortable with that. If you already have that in your bag of tricks and understand that, then it's so much easier to sight read pieces in that era. And then also knowing musical form. What kind of form is the piece? Is it a song form? Is it ternary? Is it binary? Is it rounded binary? Is it rondo form? Sonata allegro form? If you understand form, that will help you because now you know what's coming ahead in the music. And oftentimes you can also know generally what key signatures you're going to be transitioning to as you go through that piece and play it by sight. So you want to understand style, form, keys, all of that. This is just basic theory. You can get theory books. I recommend Keith Snell's Fundamentals of Piano Theory books. If you really want to get a good grasp on theory and you're not really good at it yet, those are a good place to start. Another thing to know is rhythm. Be able to look at a rhythmic passage and feel what that rhythm is. Internalize rhythm. And if you struggle with rhythm, again, there are apps to work on that too. And I can make another video on the different types of apps that I use to work on these things. But you want to know rhythm. You want to be able to internalize rhythm and feel it. You want to be able to look at it and know exactly how that rhythm goes, so that you don't have to stop and count it out or try to work through it. Another thing to do is look as you're playing and sight reading. Don't just look at the measure you're playing. You want to look ahead so that you know it's coming. And honestly, playing piano and sight reading is a lot like just reading a book. You're reading the words in front of you, but your eyes are scanning ahead so that the sentence flows as you read it aloud. Music works the same way. So if you need to practice looking ahead, you can have someone take a piece of paper or something like a flashcard or just something to cover the measure that you're currently on. And then as you're reading, say this is your measure, they're going to cover that measure and let you force your eyes forward so that you're not stuck just reading that measure that you're currently playing. If you're doing that, then all of a sudden you're like, okay, that measure's done. Oh, wait, I don't know what comes next. So you want to make sure your eyes are reading ahead. A good rule of thumb is you want to at least be reading the next measure while you're playing the one before it, or even up to 3 or 4 measures ahead. You want to be reading with your eyes while you're playing the ones early on, if that makes sense. So if you're reading measure 1, playing measure 1, you want to be looking at 2, 3, or 4 while you're playing that first measure. That way you know it's coming and you can flow. It also gives you time to see things in the music that are coming up to make a quick decision on something. For example, if something's coming up, for me, sight reading tenths is really difficult because my hands are small. I cannot play a tenth blocked. I can't do it no matter what. Unless it's on black keys, I might be able to, but I struggle to reach tenths. So I have to decide how to play those tenths. So if I'm sight reading and I look ahead and I say, oh shoot, there are tenths coming up, I make the decision not to play the 10th, and I can either play a triad or I can play a fifth or something like that, so that I get the underlying tonality of the chord there. But then I don't have to worry about trying to reach that 10th or making the decision of, do I roll the 10th or what do I do with this 10th? I just make a quick snap decision and play it differently in something that I can reach. So always look ahead while you're playing. Also, before you even play a piece, and I see this a lot in students, they'll sit down and I'll give them a piece to sight read and they just jump right in and start playing, and all of a sudden they're like, oh no, I didn't take a second to even see what the time signature is or anything. So then they stop. So before you sight read a piece, you want to do some score study. And don't just look at the time signature and jump in. Look at the whole piece. Look at the time signature. Look at the key signature. Look ahead and see what's coming up next. See what form the piece is in. Look for any tricky passages. Look for spots that might be a little funky with fingering, and make a decision on how you're going to get through that. So look through the whole piece and do some score study. Then sight read through the piece, and you'll set yourself up for better success that way. The last thing I'm going to mention in this, I'm going to make this a 2-part video because there is a lot to think about and work on with sight reading and becoming a better sight reader. So we're going to split this video in 2. The last thing for this video is reduce the score if you need to. When you're sight reading, certain pieces can be very thick in texture. And it can be hard to read through all of those notes, especially if there are a bunch of accidentals along with them, or it can be thick texture in the fact that, yeah, you can read them, but you're not quite solid or able to make a decision quick enough on what notes to play in each hand. So what you can do is then thin out the texture and leave things out. And it's called reducing the score. Sometimes when you sight read, some pieces are reductions of an actual orchestral piece, and they're not really written piano friendly. So in that case, again, would be another situation to reduce the score and make it more playable. The whole goal is, when you reduce the score, you want to maintain the rhythm, you want to maintain the harmony, and you want to maintain the melody. So if you can take out extras to make your reading more successful, then that's okay to do that. And it's wise to do that, especially if you're having to sight read on the spot with other musicians. Another thing you can do is improvise through passages that are just really difficult to read or that are difficult for you to play and fit under your hands. If you understand the chord progression and the style of the piece, then you can improvise briefly through a passage that's really thick texture or has a lot going on. It truly is just a passage you need to sit down and actually practice, that you can't really navigate successfully 100% just sight reading. So you can reduce the score and improvise in sections as well. So those will be the first 7 things that you want to do and know to be able to be a successful sight reader. And then I'll make a second video on this and go over the other things that you want to know and do, and give you some tips on how to become a better sight reader as well. So you can subscribe if you haven't, and that way you can follow along and be notified when that other video comes out. And if you have tips on sight reading or things that you've done, share them in the comments.